This is DeepCool CH370, and this is a brand new case from DeepCool that are offering in the market that is saturated with a lot of cases by a lot of companies, including this one from Lian-Li, the 205 Mini, that is tailored towards Mini and ITX builds. But this one is offering a lot for your money. For $60, the DeepCool had a lot of things right, where some of the industry leaders like the Lian-Li had it wrong for a lot more money. The Lian-Li 205 Mini is retailing around $100. If you catch it on a discount, I was able to get it for around $65, which is still $5 more than what DeepCool are offering here for $59. And I only pulled it out that I can show you some of the engineering mistakes that Lian-Li did with this case and some of the missteps where they could have had an opportunity to create a perfect package, again, for the exact same price. But where Lian-Li are coming short, this is where DeepCool are excelling, and we're gonna look at this case in depth now and see all the details, and I'm actually gonna transfer all the internals that I currently have in my 205 Mini into this case and see how everything is gonna look, and I will point you the differences in the things I'm personally looking into when I buy cases like that, and I think you should be checking out as well. Hey guys, welcome back to How Essence channel. My name is Ivan, and today we're looking at the DeepCool CH370, the white version. There's a black version as well. But what attracted me to this one, and this is something I don't see from a lot of other companies. I think NZXT and a couple other companies are doing it, including DeepCool. It's almost entirely white outside base, so you have panels, back, top, all around, window frame that is white, but the internals are actually black. So I really like that contrast because not a lot of components are white, and those that are white are normally much more expensive. I'm sure most of you are aware, if you want to get a white AIO, a white graphics card and stuff like that, it's going to cost you a little bit more money. So if you really want to have a clean build that is accenting some white versus some black, this is a great option, because if you have all black internals, they're gonna kind of blend with the internal black color of the case, and at the same time you're still gonna have the kind of snow white paint on the outside to provide some more contrast and something different compared to all the other cases. Now I'm gonna go in details here and show you some of the things that I absolutely love about this case. Starting from the price, again, $59 on Amazon without the discount. This is regular price, and I think DeepCool are knocking it out of the park with that price. Yeah, it doesn't come with any intake fans, there's no RGB, but you know what, there's so many kits out there that are so cheap now that you can probably outfit yourself with plenty of fans and still keep it under the price of the 205. The only fan they included, it's in the back. It's a 120 millimeter fan, not PWM. Again, something that I think it could have cost them a couple pennies. They should have included a PWM fan instead of just 3-pin. And I'm curious to see what the RPMs of this fan is going to be. It's going to be too loud or not. If it's too loud, I'm just going to replace it with another one. Personally, I have tons of fans, so that's not a problem for me. But if any of you guys are buying a case and then you have to go and buy extra fans, keep that in mind. It's going to bring up the budget a little bit more. So $60 in factor for another. There's a 3-fan kits RGB from Amazon you can get for around $20, $25. So realistically, you're looking at $70. Again, $30 cheaper than 205. So yeah, let's go ahead into the details. I'm going to show you some things that I absolutely love. Aside from the price is the side glass panel, 4 millimeter thick. And this one is not sliding. It's not on hinges like other manufacturers. All we have is magnets, very, very strong magnets right on top side. So if you pull really hard on top side, you will see the side panel will disconnect. And if I rotate this way, you'll see how strong they are, because as soon as you get closer to the frame, the whole side window gets attracted by the magnets and gets in. Of course, there's extra security with a screw in the back if you want to screw the whole thing together so it doesn't come off. Personally, I'm not going to do it because I often open my cases and work inside. So being able to just pull and remove the panel, it's great, and it's reinforced with a frame, some cushioning on both sides, which is excellent to see because it's not going to hit the metal frame constantly and create noise. And the magnets are on the side of the case, not on the side of the window. They're on the case, and just the metal frame trucks to it. Now, the next big thing I'm looking at, and I'm going to show you this in details as well, is the distance between the last screw holes for the motherboard and the roof of the case. This is one of the most important things I'm looking at when I pick cases. Any cases, doesn't matter if they're full ATX or mini ATX or micro ATX or whatever, I would like to have the maximum amount of room between these last holes and the roof of the case, because I'm almost always, 99% of the time, am using AIOs, liquid coolers. I started using liquid coolers ever since the first consumer H50 by Corsair more than 10 years ago, and I've never went back. I think the builds just look a lot cleaner with AIOs. I know performance-wise, the towers are matching and sometimes surpassing certain models, but I just don't like the giant bulky look of a piece of metal right in the middle of the case covering anything else. I like the clean look of AIOs. This is my thing, and I'm looking always for that big distance. And here we're looking at 2 inches between the holes and the roof, translating into being able to install 240 millimeter AIO with the fans without interfering with the memory and the rest of the components. And this is one of the biggest problems with 205. I just recently built inside of it, and I found out that I cannot use my Corsair Dominator memory because this memory is kind of high with the RGB on top, and once you try to put the 240 on top, it hits immediately the memory. So I had to downscale to kind of a lower profile DDR4 that doesn't have ARGB. So it doesn't make a perfect look for the case when you're going for ARGB on the fans and let's see other components and maybe your graphics card. So it's not ideal, and I think more room is always beneficial. And I think Lian-Li, if they added a ½ inch height of that case, it would have been absolutely perfect. Because the width is great, it's very wide, you can install a lot of taller graphics cards with no problem, but they chose to keep it very small, hence we are hurting this kind of installations. The other major thing that Lian-Li did not do, and I think every case should be done like that, including this DeepCool is done as well, is the perforations on the bottom, right above the power supply. The shroud, I prefer it to be perforated. I'm not installing any fans. Obviously, half of it's going to be kind of blocked by the power supply, but still, passively, there's more air being fed to the GPU right here. And if you have non-perforated, completely metal top of the shroud, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, especially with the AMD motherboards, normally the GPU or the PCI Express slot sits not on top of the slot, not the first one, but sits on the second one. And that creates a problem because if the GPU is 2 slot, if it's 3, don't even try it because it's going to be completely blocked by the shroud. But if it's 2 slot, you have only ½ inch, not even a distance between the shroud and the GPU, which translates into a lot of heat for the GPU. And you are going to feel 5, 6, and even more degrees Celsius higher temperature than when you have a perforation or you have more room. Some newer motherboards actually are moving the PCI Express to the top slot, and you're going to see the components that I'm going to be transferring here. The MSI motherboard actually is like that. That gives me 2 extra slots or 2 or 1.5 inch distance from the bottom to the GPU, which is much better, allowing the front fans to push air underneath and around the GPU, and this way the GPU is not overheating and it's being fed passively and actively more air inside. Some aesthetics here they have done, they created this mechanism to change the front filter and create this kind of visual difference. So if you push the button on the bottom, it's going to shift the filter up and down, creating through these penetrations the actual logo of DeepCool. I think it's more visual than anything else because functionally I would rather have more penetrations and larger openings than less, because if you push this button up and you create the logo, the area is being blocked a little bit more than it should be. An interesting touch on the opposite side, they have added some penetrations on the bottom of the case. Now I'm not sure how functional that's going to be and what exactly you're trying to passively cool here, since in the back you're only going to have some maybe 2.5-inch SSDs and the power supply. But visually it looks very nice because the print is very kind of like digital camo. I like it, and it's something you don't see every day, everywhere. Now if I pull the front cover, you will see what I was talking about, this mechanism and how it functions. It's spring-loaded and it shifts the whole filter up and down. And that way it's creating this kind of an optical illusion of the logo in the front, and it enlarges the openings for the air. And we have some more perforations on the side, and if you want to clean this one, you're going to have to take the whole front and kind of vacuum it. You cannot detach the actual filter in the bottom, but that's fine by me. I don't see any problems. And once we remove that, you'll see on the front we are allowed to install 3 120mm fans without any problem. Personally, I'll try to put 3 over here and see how it goes. Maybe it's going to be beneficial because how perforated this shroud is on top. Some of the air coming on the bottom is also going to be going through and being fed to the graphics card. You can also install 140mm fans as well. Some people I know, they like to install their AIOs in the front. Personally, I don't like that, and I prefer it to be on the roof. That way fresh air can be fed actively through the front and being distributed around the case, around the components, and fresh air is going to go up through the AIO, benefiting from all that. One of the biggest things here, and I love what DeepCool are doing here with pretty much all their cases, they're adding this GPU support by the factory. This is a stock GPU support, and it can be adjusted, can be folded if you're not using it, can be even removed. But if you have a longer, heavier GPU, you can definitely benefit and use this one. There's a cushioning added from foam cushioning added on top of it, so it's not going to scratch your expensive GPU. At the same time, it's going to provide a very good and kind of a hidden support, because obviously there's a lot of aftermarket GPU supports, but oftentimes they're not very elegant and they're not going to look as clean as this stock one. Now we're not going to see rubber grommets on this case, which is fine for $60. I'm not expecting to see any of that. The penetrations at the bottom where the cable is going to come up for the motherboard power, USB and stuff like that are large. You can channel through the cables very easily. The penetrations on the side for the 24-pin and for the PCI Expresses are also large, and the 2 ones on the top for the extra CPU, and maybe some of the fans are not small at all. Now you have to remember, run these cables when you install your motherboard before you installing the 240 AIO on top, because it's going to be on the way and you're not going to be able to route these cables easily right here. Now if we look at the top AIO, that's one thing that I think DeepCool should have thought about a little bit more, is because the power button and the reset button are exactly the same size and they're exactly the same texture. And I wish that they made the power button a little bit bigger. That way, even in the dark, if you're reaching down underneath your desk, you don't by mistake press the reset button. Yeah, there is a big distance between both. They're not right next to each other, but still, to avoid some of these issues, it would have been nice to have them different size. What I really like here is they didn't even mess around with USB 2. They just straight gave you 2 USB 3s, and they're in a big distance between each other. That way you can plug in thicker USB thumb drives and they don't interfere with itself. The other thing I don't like here is they have combo 3.5mm headphone jack, which is microphone and headphones. I wish they were separated. I prefer them to be separated, but a lot of companies are doing this minimalistic single one, and they're giving you a splitter for plugging in your headphones right here. Personally, I'm routing my headphones straight to the back of the cases or to the motherboard always. I would like to remove any interference possible. There's a small LED here that is showing the hard drive activity, or in this case SSD activities, because I don't know who else is using hard drives for main drive these days. If you are, don't. The storage is very cheap now. You can get yourself 1 terabyte fast NVMe drive for around $50, so don't do it. We have a magnetized filter right on top, which is again white to match the paint, and actually is matching the paint of the case very nicely. and larger perforations on top to accommodate 240 and 280 millimeter AIOs. Personally, I'll be installing the 240 right on top, and I'm going to be removing the filter because I want that air to escape immediately, and having an extra filter on top is just going to prevent or kind of block the air from coming out. For $60, they didn't cheap out, and all the AIO, all the 4 AIO planks on the back are reusable. They can be repositioned, not one of those that you can break off and then after that it's an empty spot and you're gonna have to buy extra if you want to cover it in the future. We have a cover here, sliding cover, obligatory these days from a lot of companies to kind of extra secure your graphics cards and expensive components not to be taken out easily. And now if I remove the back panel, the screws are captive, which again, it's a great little touch that a lot of cheaper manufacturers are not adding. And you'll see right here on the bottom, the filter for these perforations. So don't worry, there's not gonna be a lot of dust coming in inside the case from the bottom. We have an ample amount of room on the bottom for power supply. You can install the largest one if you want to. You just remember you have to reposition or remove the hard drive cage. Personally, I'm not using these kind of hard drive cages, and when I build something, if I need the room, I remove it all together. But if I want to add a 2.5-inch SSD, I can mount it on top, or I can mount it here in the back. They have already added a placement with these rubber isolators that you can easily install an SSD, and one SSD will be fine. If you're building something like that, it's more of a mid-range to a budget build, and I'm not expecting you to add a ton of storage. And personally, how I build my computers is an NVMe drive for a clean Windows install that I don't use for any other installs but Windows, and I'm using a separate SSD or NVMe drive for game installs. That way Windows never gets slow, never gets bogged down, because I'm not doing any other installs other than the clean Windows install, so the programs can run faster. In the back we have plenty of tying points, and very interesting touch, they're not your typical push through or punch through the back of the motherboard tray. They're kind of on the side of where the penetration for the CPU is, and on the side here of the large openings for the 24-pin and the PCI Express. So when you are tying your cables, you can channel them between these two and tie them easily, or use some hook and loop straps and do it as well. The room is about 3 centimeters from the lowest point to the side of the panel, which gives you plenty of room for those cables to be routed. We have some more rubberized isolators right here on this side for another SSD drive, 2.5-inch SSD drive, which is also appreciated. And like I mentioned about the graphics card support, the adjustment of the height is done with 2 thumb screws that you can unscrew and adjust the support based on your specific graphics card and how far from the shroud is located, and of course unscrew them all together and remove it if you don't need it. On the bottom of the case, if we look, we can see clearly how we can reposition this hard drive cage. There's 2 positions that we can move the whole cage over, forward and back about an inch distance, and it's secured by a screw. Again, if you don't want that, if you're fine with not installing any hard drives or SSDs right here, you can completely remove it and store it somewhere else. And we have a filter on the bottom, and this is probably the, I'm willing to forgive DeepCool for cheaping out here and giving us this kind of a flimsy remove to clean filter, not sliding out. But at the same time, I understand money had to be saved somewhere. The feet are large and elevating the case about 1.5 centimeters from your desk, but the bottom of the feet is not rubber but foam, and I mentioned that many times before. I'm not sure how much money they save here, but having rubber, it's much better for your case sitting on top of the desk, and when you try and unplug cables in and out, it's not just going to slide back and forward easily because rubber provides good traction. And this foam over time, in my experience, when you have components inside of the case, is heavy. It's going to bottom out, it's going to get flat, and eventually plastic from the feet is going to be rubbing against the desk, creating some unwanted scratches. So It's very easy to slide on that foam, even when you have components inside. Now the case itself, the metal is not super solid. It's not very thick, and you'll see in the front how easily it gets manipulated when you are moving it. Obviously, when you install fans, this is not going to be the case. It's going to be pretty rigid. And they have done some clever trickery here to make the motherboard tray more sturdy. Is again this kind of folding of the metal around the CPU and around the 24 pin in the other one to get reinforced and being riveted together with the power supply shroud provides extra rigidity. So you're not going to have problem with this case. It's not going to twist too much, especially when you install the components and you install the front panel. It's going to be pretty solid. So enough with me talking about everything else and showing you some of the details. Now I'm going to go ahead and transfer all the components from the 205 to this one, and we'll see the difference. I'm going to briefly show you how the 205 looks and how cramped everything looks inside currently, and the memory that I was forced to use because of the fact there's just not enough space on top, and that AIO interferes with the memory placement. And I'm so glad I was right about this case. Working with the DeepCool CH370 is absolute breeze. Ample amount of room, smart engineering, and I have to say Lian-Li should be ashamed charging $100 for the 205 mini, where with this case you have much more smart decisions. The support brackets is working great. I use it on my 3080 FE. The space on top is amazing. You're able to install the radiator and the fans without interfering with your RAM modules. That's why I went back to my Corsair Vengeance Pro right here. This is a very good memory, but the heatsink and the RGB are very tall. And using the Lian-Li before, I was not able to use that one. I had to grab one of those low profile memory so that I can fit it inside. I threw in 4 of these fans. This is Thermalright TL-R12 RGB 120 millimeter fans. These normally are going around $15, $20, but I managed to grab them from Amazon on promo. They were $4 each, so I grabbed 4 of these, so $16, 3 on the front, 1 in the back. Absolutely great deal, and they work excellent with this case. Fitting was no problem. Just remember you have to put them on the inside of the frame, not on the outside, because you're not going to have space between the front panel and the fans, so they have to be inside. But that's not a problem because there's ample amount of space inside, not only for the FE, but if you're having something big like that with this 3080 or some of the newer 4080s and 4090s, you're still going to have enough space to fit them inside. And this is almost 35 centimeter long GPU, and that one is fitting inside no problem. Again, with the support, you'll be able to use it. Now, personally, I'm going to be using with my FE inside because it's 2 slot. It gives enough space between the power supply shroud and the GPU, and there's enough space on top of it, so the cable is not even touching the glass. And at the same time, all these 3 fans are supplying plenty of air around that GPU, and when it's working, it's not overheating or not at that problem because I have not updated this GPU. I have not done any repasting or repadding or any of that stuff, and it's definitely running a little bit hotter compared to the ones that are already done for the Maxon and for the Yeston and some of the other 3080s I have in my possession. But I think in this specific situation, with the ID Cooling 240 AIO, with the 3 fans, with the FE, and I'm so happy that DeepCool has created a very compelling product for $60. I can recommend this case to anybody. If you want to build a smaller computer like that with micro ATX or maybe ITX, this is an incredible value and great case to work with a lot of options. Yes, you're gonna have to invest in some fans, but maybe you have some that you can reuse, or you can grab some on promotion just like myself and don't spend more than $20. If you top at $80, I think it's still a great deal for what it is and for what it's offering, the color scheme, the options, some of the smart ideas here. And I'm sorry, but don't get the Lian-Li 205. It's going to be much more difficult to work with, and you're going to get frustrated with this one. No problem whatsoever. So that's pretty much it, guys. I know lengthy video as always, but I like to go in details in these cases and show you and what you should be looking for when trying to build a computer like that and not get frustrated and have enough space to work and not interfere with a lot of the components that are being sold on the market nowadays. Hit the thumbs up if you like the video, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe if you're new, check out the links in the description below if you want to support the channel directly. It helps me tremendously to bring you videos like that regularly. And as always guys, you have a wonderful day.